Good afternoon, my people. What is going on? It is your main man, Charles Tank Harris, the founder and chief visionary officer of the financial literacy platform Wealth Our Way, where our motto is wealth is not only for the wealthy. It's time to get things started. It's Wealth Our Way Wednesdays. You're tuned in to the WOW Network. Let's get it. Long story. Where do I start? Let's begin with the interesting part. Mean streets, eroded defeat is what taught me to speak from the heart. Many choices, few of them good. That's how they keep us all trapped in the hood. If I could write a rule book for my people, I thought we could escape from there where we stood. So here I am giving content to you along that with what you should do. I'm here to speak wealth to provide you help to get it started for your family yourself. So sit down, turn up the sound, lay back with your feet off the ground. You've tuned in to the best in the streets. Wealth away, I have the world at your feet. Let's get it. Financial Power Hour. What's up, good people? It's your main man. You know how I do it on Wednesday nights, the last Wednesday of every month. And this month is more special to me than all of the other months because this is the month that our country has decided, of course, the shortest month of the year, to honor African American history. And I, being a financial person, I like to focus on the financial intersection of our history, how we became who we are today as a people, post-slavery, post-segregation and Jim Crow, post-civil rights movement, and then through the ongoing struggle of getting through mass incarceration, racial tensions, and discrimination, becoming the mighty, mighty people that we are in this land. With that being said, tonight's show is going to encapsulate all of the conversations that I've had on 15 Minutes of Finance this month, as well as take a deep dive into the works of some of the great African-American entrepreneurs that this country has known, one of the greatest historians of African-American prominence in book. And then we're going to just discuss some issues tonight. Now, I had two guests planned for tonight because it's a special show, and I wanted to double dip and have two great guests. So I had invited my big little sis, Dr. Pamela Jolly, to join us. But unfortunately, Doc Jolly had an unforeseen issue arise and is unable to join us. Now, that would normally stress me out. Y'all don't know everything about Big Tank. I give y'all a lot on the show, but I don't give you everything. I suffer from self-diagnosed OCD. And when things don't go the way I set them up to go, it freaks me out. So the fact that I got a call earlier today saying Dr. Jolly wasn't coming freaked me out. Then I thought about it. If there was a show that I was going to invite two people to, and one of them wasn't going to show up, the other cat that would need to be there is the cat that I happen to have invited. So with no further ado, I got to talk about my guy, my fellow Temple University alumnus, my man, the financial rebel himself, Camari Ellis. Camari, welcome to the show, bro.
Dang, how are you, brother?
I'm great, baby. Happy New Year. I ain't seen you in a minute.
Yeah, how about that? Well, I guess I should say Mr. Harris, right? Because we are being formal, right?
I'm the most formal cat you're going to meet. So
yes,
it's
sir.
all good. I'm so happy that
Dr. Jolly's not joining us for her Jolly Fashions and Spirits.
Oh, man. I'm heartbroken. I was so geeked on the three of us sharing a platform.
We need to do that.
We got to do that. We got to bring it back.
I'll try to get it on my show next time. I'll hijack your idea because I was jealous. I was like, oh, that's a great idea.
Yo,
she's fire. She's fire.
Pure fire, and of course her company, The Torch, is applicable to the fire she brings. And the thing about Dr. Jolly that makes me just really love her the way I do, I love her like a sister, is she's all about our people, all about financial well-being, mental health well-being. She loves Black men, and I say that in not normal Big Tank terms, in the most platonic way it can be said. She is a caregiver and a carer of Black men. If you go to places and, you see a cause that's honoring or worrying about everybody and black men aren't included, she the first one to stand up and say, well, what about the brothers? Like, she definitely loves us, man. So we'll miss her tonight.
Yep, we got to start calling her Mama Jolly or
Mama Jolly. There it is.
Yeah, because you put it so eloquently. She definitely is all about the brothers. She's about the sisters too, but she definitely reps for the brothers.
No doubt. And what I want to do, in her absence, we're still going to cover the material because, as I said, and it wasn't just hype. I'm hype you up because I'm a hype man. But the reality is I know your intellect. I've already had you on the show a couple of times. My audience knows your intellect. Your audience is constantly blessed with it. There's nobody, real rap, that I know without getting any cue cards or any email ahead of time of what we're going to talk about can delve into this subject matter better than you and Doc Jolly when we're talking about it. So
I don't know, Ting, I'm getting a little bit older, so I might need a couple Google searches for an assist.
well, I'll say it and do it slow. But for the people who have not been blessed with hearing you on the show before, give the world of Wealth Our Way some insight into who the Finance Rebel is.
Sure. So I'm Camari Ellis. Many call me the Finance Rebel. I'm the founder of the Philly tax team. I'm a tax accountant, but I also have over 20 years of experience in tax and financial services. I was a tax guy, financial advisor, institutional money manager, and now I'm back to being a tax guy again. So I've covered the whole gambit, worked in just about every facet of personal finance and small business that there is. And I love my people. So I always love talking about Black wealth.
We love that. So tonight's then going to be a great show because that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about this month on Black History Month. For Black History Month, so we changed the format of 15 minutes of finance. I love what the production team, shout out to Zach and Renee, have done with the show. And one of the things that we're doing is in the beginning of our 15 minutes of finance show, we're doing a little segment called Go or No Go, where somebody comes with a financial question that they've DM'd me, emailed me, called me, walked up to me in the street about, and I'm telling them, you know what, that's not it, player. Or, yeah, here's why you can do that. Now, there's a certain talking head financial pundit who has a similar segment on her show, but I got to say, I added flavor to mine. So we do the Go or No Go to start 15 minutes of finance. But this particular month, we did No Go or No Go because I honored a different African-American financial pioneer on a show each week. Today we did A.G. Gaston. Don't bring up A.G. yet. We did A.G. Gaston today, but when we go through today's show, I'm going to bring up all of the people that we talked about this month. I am sure none of them are not going to be in your mental Rolodex. And then we're going to, talk about the history of Black wealth in America. We're going to talk about interesting topics like whether or not integration helped us or hurt us. We're going to talk about Black money, Black wealth, the Black elite. We're going to get it in tonight. So you down?
I'm down. I don't think we have enough time. How much time we got?
We don't have enough time.
That's jam-packed right there, but let's go.
It's to the brim. So let's just get into it. So the first cat that I'm going to talk about is my favorite historian on this topic. And I'm gonna stop referencing Dr. Jolly because she died here. It hurt my heart. But Dr. Jolly turned me on to this book. It's a book by author Lawrence Otis Grant. And Lawrence Otis Grant passed away a couple years back. Actually, one of my clients pointed that out to me. Shout out to Stephanie St. Cyr, aka Lynx, Black Elite. She knew I was a Lawrence Otis Grant fan, and she pointed out to me when he passed away. This is a gentleman who had multiple best-selling books. He went to Princeton, went to Harvard, but the book we're going to focus on tonight, Our Kind of People. Now, Our Kind of People, because you know how we do it as Black folk. We just took Lawrence Otis Grant's Our Kind of People, which is one of the best written bougie Black books you could ever read. Like, it talks about how great we were from the beginning of time. And some network, I don't know if it was Fox or somebody else, turned it into a slap your mama drama. They done made Our Kind of People, who's sleeping with who husband, who done embezzled from whose company. But you can't be mad at it. You're keeping the name alive. But are you familiar with Lawrence Otis Grant in that book?
Actually, Dr. Jolly actually put me onto him. I have not had a chance to dive into his work, though. But she spoke highly of him. And if you are co-signing it, I'm sure it's something special.
It's fire, bro. And it just opened my eyes. Of course, I'm a fan of our people. I think we are capable of any and everything we put our minds to. And with that being said, there is still so much that I don't know, so much that I still think, oh, we weren't capable of this, or this is the first person to do this. You hear of the Robert Smiths and the Oprahs, and of course the Rock trilogy of billionaires, and you say, oh, we can do this. Man, we was doing it way big before they even had radios and TVs.
Absolutely.
We just were creating wealth all over the place. And with that in mind, I do want to run through the 4 people that we honored this month, one at a time. So I'm gonna bring them up and get you to say a little. So this is unscripted, good people. I'm bringing people up and throwing them in front of Camari, and I know he gonna know a lot about these cats. So
let me pull up my Google real quick.
Get your Google game tight. Our first person is another person that Dr. Jolly turned me on to, A.G. Gaston. Okay. A.G. Gaston was covered today on 15 Minutes of Finance. He is who I credit with my desire to run a vertically integrated business. And a vertically integrated business, of course, is one where you control multiple layers of the supply chain. So think about a Snickers candy bar, because I like Snickers candy bars. So I'm going to go with a Snickers candy bar. Instead of Mars M&M or whatever the company is that makes Snickers, making it, giving it to a trucking company to take it to 7-Eleven, and it's sitting on a 7-Eleven shelf. Imagine if M&M Mars also had the store right at the factory and got it in your hand. Like every step of, we make it, we package it, we sell it. And A.G. Gaston did that with the death business, life insurance, funeral homes, cemeteries. You familiar with A.G.?
I did a book review on A.G. Gaston's on my YouTube channel. So A.G. Gaston's Black Titan was a book that his niece, great niece, did on him.
Yep.
Totally enthralled by it, because AG became a multimillionaire during Jim Crow. And when they said when he passed in, I believe, the late 80s, early 90s, he was worth over 100 M's. So when we go back to, you quoted the God did verse, Jay-Z's verse, the Rock Boys, I created all these billionaires. AG created a lot of, I can't say billionaires, but in real dollars. I mean, you talk about dying. Talking about dying in 96 with 100 mil. If we do time value of money, that's about 500 million. That was the thought I had, but I didn't have a simple way of breaking it down. But you just did eloquently, so you are correct.
I appreciate you, homie. After we talked about brother AG, we talked about bring it up. Our next person we talked about was the great Madam C.J. Walker. And I love, we seem like not be able to get away from the Rock Boys right now, but I loved what LeBron's company with Maverick Carter, his business partner, they did a series on Madam C.J. Walker on Netflix. And they had Blair Underwood playing her husband. And once again, I learned so much about Madam C.J. Walker, how she worked under someone else and then did her own thing, had to fight. Oh, bang, Black Fortunes. I love that book. I love it. I have it on audio. Talk to me about Madam C.J. Walker, bro.
So Madam C.J. Walker is dope, but I do think Mary Ellen Pleasant should get more props. She's the lady who taught Madam C.J. Walker. Some will claim she was robbed by Madam C.J. Walker, but I'm not here for the slander. But just want to be factually and accurately, correct. So I don't think you can mention one without the other, because we always talk about Madam C.J. Walker. Much props due. She was a much bigger, more charismatic person. Mary Ellen Pleasant was more laid back and in the background, right? You know how we both will say wealth is quiet and it moves. Supposedly, even though Madam CJ got more props, Mary Ellen Pleasant had more money. Yeah, she was smooth with it. But yeah, you can't put down either one, because Madam CJ took it to a whole nother level. Right. With her mass distribution. Listen, you cannot have a business without distribution channel. Exactly. It's a very cute tongue tie. It's a very, very key point. If you got a product and it's great, you got to have a way to sell it. You got to have a way to get it to the market. And Madam C.J. Walker had direct sales. She did multi-level marketing before anybody else did. Before it was cool. Right. She had folks in the U.S., in the islands, I believe over in Europe and England, and maybe some in France. Yep. So, that takes a level of genius that often is not recognized amongst our people.
You know, it's great that you say that. I just was talking to someone about that. When I used to work with New York Life Insurance Company, one of my clients before I got with New York Life was a basketball player, very, very popular, all-star level player. His brother also got hired by New York Life. And, you know, you would think, and the reason I tell this story is because I tire of hearing people who aren't as successful as they feel as though they should be. And they pick on people who they feel had a leg up that wasn't available to them. And in this particular story, I knew these people intimately well. They were, clients and friends. And this guy was hired, and he had the ability to go to his brother's games, practices, hangouts, and sell insurance to everybody on his team. And they would have bought it from him, bought without the R, bought it from him solely because they would have wanted to be cool with the star of the team.
Right.
But the dude wasn't about that life. He just didn't take that opportunity and kick the door in with it. Conversely, I just mentioned LeBron and Maverick Carter earlier.
You got Maverick.
His team is dope. This is a dude who put his
not the basketball team, by the way. His home.
Right, exactly. He put his boys on, and they took it to the next level. They don't just make money off of being with LeBron. They now have agencies and companies and products that go beyond LeBron because they took the door opening and they ran through it. So what I parallel that to the Madam C.J. Walker story to say, it's one thing to have an idea. It's another thing to have a product and a company. It's another to make it mainstream and to put it in everybody's hand. And you got to credit that. But I do, from looking at that, I didn't know much about the other woman, Mary Pleasant, until I saw Netflix, until I saw the special. I was like, oh, okay. It's always normally some dirt if you dig deep enough. So it was interesting to see it.
There is. And again, like I said, I'm not trying to throw shade on Madam C.J. Walker, but I feel like without bringing up Madam Mary Ellen Pleasant, it's throwing shade on her. I want to be respectful of all the ancestors.
I feel you there. Then, so I'm back. You see the pictures of A.G. Gaston and Madam C.J. Walker, and you see they from back in the day. I brought it a little more current with this next cat because this is another mentor in my mind, Mr. Reginald Lewis of TLC Beatrice Claim. Why should white men have all the fun himself? I know Camari got the book. I know he got the book. Bang! There's the book.
I'm gonna do a book review on this. This book is very impactful. Very impactful.
Yo, listen. I got to keep it funky. I didn't read the book. I listened to it. Listening to his
did
story.
Both.
You did both.
You can listen. Whatever way you can synthesize, you can get and synthesize the information is all that matters.
No doubt. When I listened to that book, I was so impressed with his desire to ignore racism. That stuck out to me throughout that book, where his own team would say, you did everything right. You didn't get that because you're black. And he would say, nope. He said, if I did everything right, I would have got it in spite of being black. So I didn't do something to make these people want me to, regardless of color. He wouldn't even hear racism as a hurdle, which I think so many times in an environment where racism comes into play, we can make our own excuse and our own obstacle before we ever experience the obstacle.
Facts.
And I love that he just, of course we all know it exists. It existed more for him than it does for us today.
I was about to say, I'm gonna push back a little bit because he knew about racism. You could absolutely get the feel though that he was ignoring it. He wasn't ignoring it. He knew he was better than it.
Yes.
And that's a different mindset than just ignoring it, in my opinion, right? He knew he was above it, and he was totally fearless. This cat went to Harvard in 1965, Harvard Law School in 1965, and he was a product of an HBCU. And so you can't say he wasn't, cognizant of it. He just felt he was better than it, in my opinion. So he held himself at a higher regard than everything else.
I appreciate that.
He kicked everybody's ass.
I do. I co-sign that. He went to Virginia State. He was originally a football player. He's an F that after a certain point. And I said on the show the other day, which once again, trailblazer, they'll never let it get done again. He was the only person to ever be admitted to Harvard Law without applying to the law school.
And he didn't pay for it.
He paid for it. They paid for him. They did everything. And
Yep.
he made a way. That's where I say, it keeps my optimism alive that there's a line from the movie Loving Basketball that Sanaa Lathan said her dad was telling her she might want to give up on the dream of playing college basketball, that it was the last week of recruiting season and there's very little chance. And she stopped the mid-sentence. She said, so there's still a chance. Like, don't tell me how little the chance is. Let's focus on the fact that there's a chance at all. And that was Reginald Lewis. If he knew it could be done, then he could do it. Like, Katz is doing it, I'm going to do it.
Absolutely.
The last person of the month, very interesting story. I actually, of all places, discovered this woman on a TikTok video, Miss Sarah Rector. Sarah Rector has the distinction of being, she was so wealthy back when it wasn't cool to be wealthy, that the good folks of her land tried to get her named as a white person. They said, Black people can't be this wealthy. We're going to change your race to white. Now, supposedly, the rationale behind it was for her benefit. They recognized how wealthy she was, and the laws of the land didn't let Blacks on first-class trains, didn't let them in hotels. And they felt as though she should have the right to do it. So they figured by changing her birth certificate nationality that she would get the right. I don't think that worked too well. But they had the law of the land in her time was that if you were too wealthy and too successful, they literally took ownership or guardianship from your parents and gave you a white guardian. So that was the first thing they did. But she had so much money that even after doing that, they said, it's not enough that we just give you a white guardian. We're going to make you a white person because you got too much money to be a darkie. And she got her money from her grandfather was African-American, and her grandmother was a Creek Indian, Native American, and they were the land grant. They gave the land that they felt as though was the crappiest to the people of color, the Black people in that area. And it just so happens that out of necessity, her dad couldn't keep up the payments on the taxes, so he leased the land to an oil company, and the oil company struck oil. They were pulling 250 barrels a day out this land, and she just got filthy rich.
They was probably pissed off.
No, it was hot. I'm surprised she lived through that. When you start seeing some of the movies and depictions of how people were treated, I'm surprised.
In Oklahoma.
In Oklahoma, she could have very easily ended up in the trunk or under a horse's tail because they didn't have cars early, so you put her under a horse. So those were the people we covered this month on 15 Minutes of Finance. And now what I want to do is divert our attention back to our kind of people and Lawrence Otis Grant's book. And I really want to talk with you about your thoughts on where we are as a people compared to how we had to do it post Jim Crow, when we were segregated and we had to live confined within ourselves and make our own economies. So I'm going to start with the question, do you feel as though integration was good for Black people in America, or were we better off when we were dependent on ourselves and solely economic?
So I hope I'm not going to disrupt the flow. I don't think integration ever happened. We had desegregation. So when you look at what happened after Brown versus the Board of Kansas, or Brown versus the Board of Kansas, they made the schools, quote unquote, equal, right? All the education was equal. But after all that legislation was passed, we still have segregation. Take you and I are from Philadelphia, one of the most segregated cities in the nation. Things are changing a little bit, but Blacks still go to school with Blacks predominantly. Whites still go to school with whites predominantly. There are exceptions. Latinos go to school with Latinos, and Asians go to school with kind of a smattering with everybody, right? But for the most part, everybody still stays in their own lane, in their own neighborhood, in their own box. Now, some people will, I see the argument all the time. Desegregation or integration was the worst thing that ever happened to us. But nobody ever talks about the fact that we were still getting lynched before these laws and these things changed. Nobody ever talks about the fact that you and I probably wouldn't be able to have this conversation right now if those things didn't take place. So it was bittersweet. But if you go back to A.G. Gaston's book, or Black Titan, his grand niece's book, he talks about how after desegregation or integration, how many people didn't go to his hotels anymore because they wanted to go to white folks' hotels.
Yep, I remember that.
Now, so I'm getting back to your question, right? Was integration the worst thing for Black folks, or was it a bad thing for Black folks? The Chinese went through many of the same struggles that Black people went through in this country. There was a law to make them citizens. There was a lot of things. They were treated terribly, especially in the West Coast. Now a lot of that has changed. But even though we now have, quote unquote, free movement, what do? They still have their Chinatowns. They still spend amongst each other. They still work with one another. And again, these are global generalizations, y'all. So don't get too much into it. But they still cleave to one another. We don't. And there's a lot to that as well, right? Because redlining was. Do you cuss on the show, Tank?
I cuss on the show, baby. Do you think?
Redlining was a major fuck up for Black folks.
Yes.
Right. And so again, it's really nuanced. And I'm not the cat that's going to just give you a yes or no answer because it sounds good in the soundbite. I want people to really think about this stuff. And if you disagree with me or come back with something else, that's going to make me sharper. So I'm all with it. But just to say integration was bad, well, we all were forced to live in these overpopulated neighborhoods that couldn't get any insurance, that oftentimes weren't our neighborhoods in the first place because we didn't own the property in those neighborhoods. We could just live there. So it's 6 one end after a dozen the other. Are there some things that are worse now? Yeah. Are there some things about the same? When Dr. King marched on Washington, the unemployment rate for Blacks was still double that of the national average. Still the same now. So in some ways we've made progress, in some ways we have not. But
I love that.
We have to kind of keep it in we got to keep it in context and think about it. Well, what has happened? I mean, we had redlining. I heard Chris Rock say this the other day. He said, we technically really wasn't free until 1975. He said the whole Jim Crow era was another form of slavery. Right, and civil rights and voting rights acts happened in 64 and 65. Then 10 years later, we kind of got able to move. So we've only been able to move roughly 47 years. Other people in this country have been doing things for centuries, and we always try to say, they try to say, why aren't you guys doing better? Why aren't you guys pulling yourself up by your bootstraps?
Yeah, so first of all, I appreciate your answer. And I would expect nothing more than a colorful answer like that. Yes or no would have us out of here 30 minutes before it's time to leave. So thank you, bro. But what I'll say is the issue around segregation for me is one of the most epiphany-driven events of my life. So I grew up probably up until age 30-something saying that integration was the best thing for people of color, Black people in America. Gave us access to the Harvards of the world. Let me see that, there was a 4 seasons to aspire to be able to stay at. And let me see, go ahead.
Technically, though, we had Black folks graduate from Harvard before 65.
Agreed.
W.E.B. Du Bois and what's my man? Miseducation in Egypt. Carter G. Woodson. Matter of fact, the man who created this month. Side note. Please stop saying folks gave us this month. Carter G. Woodson created Negro History Week. Then they took it, and then it became, not they, the man, but they made it bigger and made it Black History Month. But it wasn't just given to us. But I'm sorry to cut you.
I appreciate that. No, I appreciate that clarification. So, I think that I always carried integration as an opportunity. I said, this is an opportunity to do better, that had I been locked in my own neighborhood and not been able to see more than 5 blocks in each direction, I wouldn't have had that opportunity. Then one day, and this is a book I actually did read and not listen to, I read Bill Rhoden's $40 Million Slave. And that book, I'm not going to be as over the top as to say it changed my life, but it definitely changed my perspective. And on anything that it changed my perspective on, it was integration. When they started, and I have a sports background, so I got to start with sports because he's a sports columnist and a world-renowned author. But he talked about the strength of the Black athlete in collegiate sports before Bear Bryant and the other popular white coaches in the South decided that they couldn't win without the brothers and started bringing them in. We think about the United Negro, I apologize. You think about the Negro leagues in baseball and these other different things that we had going on when we had no choice but to depend on ourselves. And what ended up happening in segregation is they cherry picked the very best, not just in sports, but if you were smart or you were a dentist, well, come be a dentist downtown with the good white folks. The people in your neighborhood, they'll figure out how to do something with their teeth. And it ended up taking the best. And now I feel ashamed almost of my pre-$40 million slave book reading mindset, because I was like, no, this was me not understanding how great we were without needing the milk in the cereal. And that history was hidden from me until I read that book.
But shout out to Dr. Carter G. Woodson, right? Because the reason why he created Negro History Week is because he got tired of white folks slandering black folks and saying that their history was not worth of anything. So it's a blessing that we even have this and we're able to celebrate it now and talk about it now. But yes, we have all been fed a diet of Europeanized history, which basically means liar's history or false history. So, the thing is, though, now you're here, you made a change. Thank God for brothers like William Roden. I only read part of that book. I haven't finished it. But that's what it's about. It's about progression.
Yep. Getting your eyes open. And Sister Kim put a book in the chat that I want us to focus on, The Color of Law. I'm going to take a look at that.
Have you read that?
I've not read that, so I definitely.
Oh, okay. That's Miss Babray. That's the superstar right there, Kim Babb. Yes, Color of Law is a fantastic book by Richard Rothstein, I believe his name is. He's a white Jewish lawyer that breaks down the problems of redlining. Now, I've known about redlining. I've been a history geek all my life, but when you read it and you see him break it down, how they had covenants and mortgages and deeds, and how it precluded black people from owning these lands, it's eye-opening. You see how sinister it is. So yes, thank you.
I want to ask you a question about that. I have a theory, and I have a conversation based around this theory with some brothers in the morning. Why do you feel as though? So let me start before I ask the question. I'm gonna make a statement. I feel as though black people and the black man in particular are targeted by systemic racism and the power structure of this company to keep us down in a way that our Asian, Hispanic, immigrants from other countries are not targeted in that way. Do you think it is purely just the despise and hatred of a black person? Or do you think there's, like, as Erykah Badu says, they don't believe in God, but still they fear us? Which one do you think? Do you think we get this much attention because, oh, God forbid, these black people get it together?
I think it's part of that. I think for some people it's part of white guilt as well. So they know what they did is fucked up. So they're trying to make amends, so to speak, now, or trying to further dampen things. I mean, when we look at what just happened in this country, this whole Make America Great thing, it was never great for black folks. What are they trying to do? They're trying to go back to when it was, where black folks had to go to separate bathrooms, couldn't stay in the same hotels, couldn't use the water fountain. That's a thing. That's a real thing. And it's funny, you'll hear folks say things and then kind of walk it back or try to add a little color to it to really disguise what they're really saying. But at the end of the day, Make America Great Again was basically saying, all you coloreds, go back to your place, go back to your hoods, and leave us the hell alone, because we know too many of y'all are having babies. We're not having enough babies. We're not driving economic power. Pretty soon, we're not going to be able to drive political power, which is economic power. And so we are afraid. And this is what we want to do to try to hold on as long as possible. And I mean, there are quote unquote white racists who say as much.
Oh, no doubt. I saw an ad ran where that was the premise of the ad, where they were showing scenes from the 20s and the 30s where gentlemen still walk the street with their top hats on before dinner time. And Black people, if they were coming up the street, had to keep their head down and cross the street. And that was the overtone of the commercial was make America great again. Like you're to your point, like let's make it where they know they and I just saw something not too long ago. One of my guests from earlier this year, Kelly, had brought it up to me. There was a section of Mississippi where they were still in, operating under slavery until
in
about
60s.
In the 60s.
And the 70s.
About 40 years ago.
But that's not the only state. It wasn't just Mississippi. It was also, I want to say, in Georgia as well. And there was a couple of, listen, they were practicing eugenics, the way of exterminating people in North Carolina up to like 1973, 74. Google it. I'm not lying. Go and look at it. So that's in our lifetime. This shit's been going on. I mean, so I know a lot of people try to avoid it, and they say it's a crutch, and they say we're
get over it.
Get over it, and we're choosing to be victims. So there's one thing to choose to be a victim and say, listen, I'm not worthy. I can't do anything. The man just got me down. It's another thing to when you get up and you have pulled yourself up by your bootstraps to be thrown in jail or murdered or other things. And that's happened over and over and over again. So
I'm experiencing something now. So some of my audience knows this, some doesn't, some don't. I've gotten involved in the cannabis business in New Jersey at a very, 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 very heavy level. I'm involved with a cultivation manufacturing company. I'm also putting some dispensaries in orbit. Just a lot of things going on with me in cannabis. And what I'm seeing is for all of the mistreatment of Blacks, and once again, especially Black males, the war on drugs, mass incarceration, and all of the loud talk that is going on about social equity and let's make it up for Black people for how this happened, it's all talk. Whenever you hear somebody getting minority money, 8 out of 10 times, it's a white woman getting minority money. And I wouldn't even be mad because once again, I'm not a racist. I wouldn't be mad if it was the white woman ultimately stepping up for herself and saying, I'm going to do this. But what you end up finding out was that she was just fronting for her white husband. So at the end of the day, it is still the white male that's getting the benefit that is supposedly being earmarked for the Black male. Now, I'm definitely not as good with my stats as you are, good brother, but I saw something in passing the other day about where is all the money that was supposed to be coming from the whole George Floyd death, all of the social equity, Black companies getting money, Black foundations getting Black money, Black schools getting money from mainstream white corporations because everybody was so dismayed by what happened on live TV for a lot of us, So talk to me about your understanding of how, going back to that question about are Black people especially targeted and held down, because I go to casino reservations all the time and I see where the people who were indigenous to this land, they got their share for their, not land for not no one gets fair retro. Let me clean that up. You can't make up for some of the tragedies and travesties.
Sorry for the facial expressions.
Nah, you were right though, and I'm glad it allows me to clean that up. But they got something, whereas we get nothing, and that just always concerns me of why we can watch so many other groups be made, some effort to try to make them whole, but reparations and what do Black people need? Forget that.
Well, I don't know if you want me to go into this thing. There's a lot of reasons for it. Again, it's very nuanced. You have to go deep when we talk about the Native Americans. That's very nuanced, right? Because when we go to Sarah Rector's story, her story, she was Black. She was a woman of African descent, but is intertwined with Native Americans. Mm-hmm. But how many Native American nations turn their backs on Black folks?
Right.
Look up blood continuum, and it gets deep. It gets weird. Even I supposedly have a nice piece of Native American lineage that flows through my blood. I don't really claim it because I don't really care. Because for me, everything for us is about turning our backs on our origin and our source, and that is Africa, or the country, or the, excuse me, not country, continent in which we derive from.
Right.
And so I always think of going back to the source in which we came from. And so everything has been programmed and manipulated for us to turn our backs on that. I call it the Tarzan effect. And so the white man is liberated or ruled the dark continent, and nobody else should know anything. And Africa is only about barefoot people and people that are starving and need $2 a day to feed them 12 meals and so forth and so on. But we never look at the greatness of Timbuktu and some of the other tribes and nations in there that have done things. They only show one aspect of the story, right? Like, you know, with the Woman King, phenomenal movie, by the way.
I just watched that again yesterday. It's crazy.
Oscar worthy. I would say the best film of the year of 2022. But everybody's bringing up this whole concept of Africans selling Africans into slavery, but nobody ever goes back to, it really wasn't a term of African or blackness at the time. That is a result of social construct. So I say all that to say is that we have been so dependent and so in lockstep with Europeanized thought, education, style, history, right? Because they put it, we haven't really broken apart and said, no, the point of being American isn't to be American in their eyes. The point of being American is for us to be fully black and claim all our blackness or our Africanness. But we haven't done that. We put Americanism higher than black, in my opinion. Because I always ask the question, we're not really that far removed from slavery.
Nah, not at all.
If you go back, let's say 10 generations, would our parents really care about us pledging allegiance to a flag? I mean, what would they really want? And some of them did, right? Some of them wanted to be part of the American society. They slicked their hair back. They went into the military. They did all these things to be accepted. And what has it gotten them? And this is no diss to the ancestors, because I feel like I do not have the right to criticize those that came before me, whose shoulders I stand upon. But I do have the right to analyze what was going on and what's the best way to go forward.
Yeah, to see if it works for you.
Right.
Right.
And so, no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
And I saw an interview, I think it was on Instagram, somebody put it in my DM, where Akon was talking about how powerful Africa would be as a continent if every black person came home. You know, we take all of the knowledge, isn't that, so, you know, bringing it back to business just for a second, isn't that what entrepreneurial spirit is all about? You go get an education.
Where the opportunity is.
Yeah, you get an education, you go work at a big business that's doing something, whatever that thing is. You bring your individual skill set there and say, if this was my company, I'd do A, B, and C different, perhaps better. And then you go start your business and you attempt to do A, B, and C better. But you got the knowledge from somewhere. So if every Black American would say, hey, I learned from democracy. I learned from capitalism. I learned from America. And now I'm going to take that knowledge back to my country and do my continent, find out where your country on the continent is and go do your thing. The resources, I believe, would be, as Akon said, infinitely abundant.
Yeah, but the problem is you haven't been educated to accept the place where you came from. You've been educated and brought up to hate where you came from, so much so you reject it. As Malcolm used to say, who taught you to hate yourself?
Yep.
I mean, and none of this stuff is new. You can go back to Garvey, right, which you could probably say is the grandfather of the whole Black Wall movement. Well, Du Bois is actually the father of Pan-Africanism. Many people don't know that. But you could go back to Garvey, who was talking about economic, cultural, political stuff. I mean, Booker T was as well. So was W.E.B. Du Bois. I actually wish Dr. Jolly was here for this. This would be an even more impactful because we have deep conversations about those three, along with Carter G. Woodson, about their contributions and their and how they had so much friction over it and how we keep doing the same thing over and over again. But you can go back to a lot of the same things that were talked about before in the past, but our programmed hate for our skin color and ourselves and our mind is so deeply rooted that it's really hard to get out of it. Yeah, I mean, many times we don't like to hear this, but we're Negropeans. So, and that's not my term.
I know. You don't rock with that word too hot at all. So
but you know what? We had a conversation. I never forget the first time we talked about that. I have reduced my stance on it. And what Tank's talking about, he's not talking about Negropean. Mm-hmm. I hate the term nigger or nigger. They're synonymous to me. I think it's totally intellectually dishonest to try to change the ER and the A and say that there's really a difference, right? It's the same thing, just that the A is typically said by Black folks,
right?
But we're still invoking the spirit of white people when we say it, right. Even though I know we're saying it's in a term of endearment, but let somebody get mad at somebody. Still the A. It's still the A, right? And then let a white person say it. Right. But I still have to say I've reduced my stance because there's some things I can't explain other than say that's just some nigga shit.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this. One of the marks, in my opinion, as Charles Tank Harris, of a great man and an intellect is someone who will take external stimuli in, mix it with their own personal core beliefs and understandings, and have the ability to see a different perspective. Not necessarily change all the way, but see a different perspective. So I respect you for that. I don't even think we had that conversation. I didn't know you had that softened your stance on it. Or
not softened. I mean, I guess it is softened, but that's before I was like staunch. Like, can you go a week without saying the N-word?
I purposely wasn't going to say it on the show because of you. I was like, don't let the N-word fly out while Camari around.
Yeah, I mean, but I do appreciate the time that I was like, this is totally unacceptable. And it is unacceptable, but
it is.
That's where we are.
I tell a story about the reason, and it's funny because my stance has kind of changed, I guess, closer to your original stance as well. Mm-hmm. I was at one of my son's 7-on-7 football games tournaments last year, going into his first freshman year of high school, and they had spring 7-on-7 tournament. I'm sitting at this school in a predominantly white area, and in front of me are 6 white people, three couples, men, husband and wife, sitting in front of me. To my flank left are some high school students, 5 African-American high school students. They said the N-word so many times, it was making my skin crawl because I knew the audience that was hearing it. And I know the takeaway is, how can they be offended if we want to think it or say it? They don't even use anybody's name. They ain't saying John, Jimmy, Mark, nobody. It's N. They were saying it in places where me, who grew up with the word, I was like, I wouldn't have even used it there. Like, they created new ways to use it. They made it a verb, an adjective, a noun. And at that point, I was sickened by hearing the word. And I said to myself, I thought of you. I said, yo, this is what Camari's talking about. Like, it's one thing for us to think we have this private language and acceptableness of a term. It's a whole other thing of you're in mixed company now, and look how this word is being used and heard and taken from people. So I feel you on that, good brother.
Yeah. And I mean, when you think about it, right, what was Master's dream? Niggas to know their place, right?
Yep, to put us in line forever.
And so by accepting his language, what have we done?
We know our place.
Yeah, I mean, so for me, I know people be like, oh, Camari, it's getting too deep with this Malcolm Farrakhan shit. But I mean, when you really think about it, it's like, there's some points to that. There's some points to that.
I don't want to leave the show without bringing it back to the Black elite. I don't want to leave the show without talking about some of the terms and places and things I heard from Lawrence Otis Grant and Our Kind of People. He talked about the Divine Nine. He talked about, and when we think about I was on a plane ride, an airplane from, I want to say I was going to somewhere on the West Coast. I was going to Vegas. And I watched the story of the AKAs, the 20 pearls or 24 pearls. I can't think of it now. Don't know AKAs. Stab me in my sleep, please. But whatever. And my daughter's a Delta. I didn't know that Deltas were an offshoot of the AKAs. That they left, their founders of AKAs. A couple of them stepped off and made Delta Sigma Theta. Like, it was interesting learning the history of what these women did in this country that was amazing and miraculous to me at a time where you look at the years of the founding of these entities,
and look at where they occurred.
And where they occurred. We weren't supposed to be able to do anything, and yet we're forming corporations on a college campus and learning how to organize and grow and affect change. So you got the Divine Nine. Then for grown folk outside of school, I know there's grad chapter for the Divine Nine, but you escalate to that next level of the Boule and the Links.
You're about to get us in trouble. We're gonna be like, where's the Illuminati at?
Yo, these top line entities for Black elite. I have clients who are in the Boule. I have clients who are in the Links.
We both know people in the Boule. Problem, you know what? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you.
No, you good, baby. Go ahead. What you gonna say?
No, we always run up in this circular conversation like the Boule and the Masons. And we can't forget the Masons, right?
Can't forget the Masons. I don't have a slide for them, but we can't forget the Masons.
We can't, because they always say like the Masons is the breeding ground for the Boule, and then they're all puppets for the Illuminati. It's like, so anything of any kind of distinction or intellect always has to be connected to some kind of white power structure entity.
Didn't JC say that in Freemason with Rick Ross? He said
he said it in many lines.
Yeah, he said if a Black person rich, he got to be on the devil-ish. Right. And for Black people to say that, that's some real NIGGA-ish. Like that was a great line. He said if a Black person make it, he must be part of the Illuminati. He must be the devil. And that goes back to the self-hatred you're talking about.
Yep. And again, it's that programming right now. The elite as a whole, whether it's Divine Nine, the Boule, the Masons, it's complex. And I'm not trying to give them an out, but it's a complex thing because the boys gets charged with being an elite, right? Bourgeoisie. But oftentimes these people were just trying to be great.
Yeah.
What their image of greatness is can be challenged, though, because there's enough history to show that they aligned with Europeanism, whiteness, oftentimes more so than Blackness. But you have to factor in the times.
Yeah.
There wasn't a whole lot of education on Black folks, and all the education they got on it was Tarzanized, right? So it was whitewashed.
Right.
Can we really try to throw them under the bus for that when they didn't have the resources? That
was the origins of my thought that integration was the greatest thing for us. That last bit that you said, but I didn't have the opportunity to live in their times, right, where for them it really was that. It really was, right, hey, I've done everything I can do in this Black area I'm in. Right. I got to cross the street to do more.
And I'm trying to make sure my babies don't get massacred and lynched, and my penis gets cut off, and my fingertips get picklized and put into a jar as a souvenir. So the level of terror that Black folks went through, I don't think people realize that. Right. Like, if you're not really in the history, and even me being in history, I can't imagine running a fair. I mean, even when you look at the Black migration from South to North, many people say it was for jobs, and it was, but it was also to get away from the Klan. Yeah. We don't talk about that, though.
Yeah, sundown towns, things of that nature. Yes. Don't be outside after dark, Negro. Throwing babies in the alligator pit for Beta Gate. Letting Black people sleep on your feet to cure your sickness. Even in watching the Woman King again yesterday, watching some of the warriors on the slave auction block, and watching the guy, just feel. If you think about the atrocities that Blacks have suffered at the hands of oppressors, it can never be made whole. So I go back to that statement about trying to make up some of the stuff for the indigenous people. People who were wronged will never be made right. All you can do is make an effort to apologize and remunerate in some way, shape, or form.
But I would even do that.
I would be remiss to not bring up Jack and Jill which is the breeding ground for all of the Black elite. I'm not gonna lie, a little jealous. I didn't get a chance as a child to go to a cotillion and meet me somebody in a little frilly dress. But I was very get some fly honeys. I was proud to know that they started in Philadelphia.
I didn't know that. I did not know that. Okay.
Philly has such rich history, and it's documented in that book with Chestnut Hill and Germantown and Mount Airy. And that was funny because when I was young in West Philly,
I was hating on us uptown cats.
Oh my God! If you lived in Mount Airy or East Oak Lane, we thought you was rich and we thought you were bougie
because we had a couple trees.
It was crazy. So good brother, as I knew we would do, we already at 56 minutes. We about to get up out of here. The conversation just flew. I thank you so very much. Still miss, that we didn't have Doc Jolly here, but I can only imagine how much more phenomenal a conversation it would have been with the three of us. But we will have to make a date on your program to do that.
Well, I don't want to steal the thunder, so we got to bring it back to your program first, and then we'll come to mine. I'm probably going to do like a 4-hour segment because you talk, I can talk, Doc Jolly can talk. Woo. So we're going to have to break it down all the way. That's right. Mount Airy, Uptown. Yep. So I'm from an area in Uptown that's called the Ogontz Avenue area. And when I was growing up, some people will call it West Oak Lane. Some people will call it Mount Airy. I call
it where Pagano's is.
I grew up 3 blocks from Pagano. So yeah.
There it is.
So yeah. But it could really be both. But now here's the funny thing. For some of the real staunch Mount Airy people, the 19119 people, they don't like nobody touching on their stuff. They are their own separate thing. But salutes to Mount Airy because they were one of the first birthplaces of integration. Right? A lot of teachers, a lot of nice, good. I don't like to call white people white folks. I call them human beings, the good ones, because they're human, right? Because that's what we're really after. We're really after humanism, not necessarily this color thing, and not to say I'm not Black or don't accept my Blackness. But at the end of the day, I'm like, I can work with a human.
Right.
I don't want to have to deal with some of these other people who are white folks.
And I feel you on that. My boy Trey Johnson, shout out to my man Bigger. He says it all the time. He says racism is stupid because race is an ignorant concept. He says if I cut the heart out of a person who was Black and put it in the person who was white, they would get up and walk. If the doctor did it right, of course, they would get up and walk. Their body is not going to reject the Black heart because Black is different from white. Your body wouldn't know because internally we are all the same DNA, inner workings, genetics, all of that stuff. So this outward appearance that we all derive because we migrated to different areas of a marble is stupid that we hold a standard behind that, but we do.
Yeah. Shout out to Charles Drew, right?
No doubt, Dr. Drew. So with that being said, bro, we're wrapping this thing. Where can the people find my man, the Finance Rebel?
Well, you can find me later on tonight at about 8 p.m. on YouTube, the Finance Rebel podcast, the Finance Rebel show. I'll be there. I do a show every week, every Wednesdays, 8 p.m. Tank got me up out early, got into my research time, but I said, Tank called, I got to answer. But you can find me. You can find me all over the place at the Finance Rebel or Camari Ellis. I'm easy to find.
We love it, man. I thank you, good brother, for being here. Move me. I thank you. I know your time is valuable, and I always appreciate when you give something to me. Thank you so much, good brother. Appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
Let's go, good people. Let's get out. Thanks for tuning in to the Wild Network. For more great content like this, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page at Wealth Our Way Network. Also, don't forget to follow us on IG and Facebook. Remember, wealth is not only for the wealthy.